Hello, everyone. I recapped/reviewed the first two seasons, so I'm going to cover the third season next. When I was younger, I really liked the season, though certain elements of it annoyed me even back then, and a lot of it still holds the same today regarding my feelings about it. It will all make more sense once I get through everything. I found Walk Like an Egyptian Part 1 to be a great introduction episode. You really get a good feeling of newbies, Sierra and Alejandro, which is a good thing for one and a bad thing for another. Guess who? Izzy, Noah, and Owen are hilarious together. Tyler is funny with failing to win over Lindsay, and Bridget is dealing with being away from Jeff for the first time. A bunch of other people were okay to relatively forgettable throughout the episode. I didn't enjoy Cody or Ezekiel in the episode. Courtney and Gwen were mixed bags, as they were half entertaining and half irritating at the same time. Duncan was insufferable in the episode, and I was so glad that he effed off, since he essentially made it to the very end of the last two seasons consecutively, so having a break from him is nice. I did not care for the setup regarding the triangle between him, Courtney, and Gwen, and he was a petulant brat in the episode. Walk Like an Egyptian Part 2 was boring in my opinion. The challenge was very simple, and not a whole lot happened. Of course the teams formed, and I liked seeing Sierra and Izzy interact with one another. The two of them, Alejandro and Noah, were the standouts in the episode in my opinion, and made it more tolerable. Everyone else were mixed bags, okay, or forgettable at best. Ezekiel is booted here, and I think him being booted first twice isn't funny, but I could deal with it. He was whining about wanting to prove himself, and it just got very old very quickly. What they decided to do with him as the season went on, with turning him into Feral Zeke, should have never happened, and it was just unneeded cynicism which took away from the reality-grounded elements that made the show so likable. They could have kept him eliminated instead of staying on the plane all season. Super Happy Crazy Fun Time Japan, I hope I said that correctly, is a relatively enjoyable episode, though the team victory losing streak became obvious and all the members looked pretty poorly in the episode. DJ's curse is insufferable, with Harold and Lashana being annoying as heck through the episode, and the other two, Lindsay and Bridget, were forgettable. I did enjoy the fighting between Heather, Gwen, and Courtney, where Cody and Sierra had to do all the work and scramble to come up with something. The commercial that Team Chris is really hot came up with is really funny, and I enjoyed the dynamic between the five of them as well. Japan was a great location to watch in the episode. Harold gets booted in the episode, and he wasn't good in the season. He was a know-it-all in prior seasons, but it was never done in an obnoxious manner like this. And he usually had other elements that made him likable in those seasons, but that sense of likability wasn't there in this season. He got better in the aftermaths, but his run in the game as a competitor is not good, and I found it pathetic that he had to be tricked into quitting by Alejandro, which is his final send-off. Anything Yukon do, I Can Do Better was a pretty solid episode, as I did like the challenge and the Yukon was a nice choice. Courtney and Heather's dynamic with one another is brilliant. Tyler managing to clutch a win for his team, and Noah and Cody were also great in the episode. Alejandro managing to get Bridget's tongue stuck to a pole was pretty nice to see from his end, and how he went on about his business afterwards. I liked seeing Lashana and Lindsay lollygagging and gossiping throughout the episode, and Owen as well as Izzy were great too. DJ was awful with his stupid curse and crying until his tears turned into ice, which caused for him to not be able to see as he was doing the challenge. Sierra was awful again in the episode, and Bridget made a fool of herself. Speaking of Bridget, she does not redeem herself after her poor performance in the last season, and really proves that she is awful on her own as a competitor. I know a part of this was done because the producers in real life wanted her to be a part of the aftermaths, but it's sad to see how much she stumbled. Her storyline of cheating on Jeff was really poor, especially with the amount of grief she gave him in the last season, and because she falls for Alejandro so quickly. It's just a pathetic ending to her character, in my opinion. Broadway Baby is of course in New York, and I found this episode to be the most enjoyable one yet. Alejandro and Heather start to have significant interactions here, where she is trying to get an upper hand on him, and he riles her up. Cody ends up falling in a statue cleavage, Sierra was really great with how unintentionally she started to drive Chris mad, and I liked Tyler throughout the episode, though Lindsay forgetting about him got pretty old by this point in the season. Team Victory not coming in last was great to watch, though I liked seeing Lindsay getting annoyed with DJ and Lashana dancing, whereas those two were kinda in the episode. Courtney sitting her butt off and enjoying the scenery was fun, and I liked Noah and Owen's friendship here. Gwen was forgettable in the episode. Aftermath, Bridget over Troubled Water, to me is the final typical Aftermath episode, as the eliminated characters Harold and Bridget are interviewed, where it's the last episode that it ends up happening. Harold reunites with the Drama Brothers, and I like seeing Kim, Justin, and Trent as a trio, and how Beth, Katie, and Sadie stand for them and slap fought one another over it. Eva was hilarious in that episode, with being furious about her job and slamming the mic down several times before walking off. Jeff was likable in the episode, and you understood his anger towards Bridget. I did like his dynamic with Blaney. Bridget came off pretty well throughout the episode, as she had to beg for Jeff's forgiveness, and Beth was a great wing woman for her. I really enjoyed this episode, and everyone was great in it. Slap Slap Revolution is a disappointing episode. I actually really liked the challenge and some of the costumes that they wore. Sierra was actually very funny throughout the episode. Lindsay and Tyler finally ending up reconciling was a cute moment. Courtney being annoyed as ever with Heather was great, and Noah was comedic gold here. Alejandro and Heather are great with their interactions, and his increasing villainy as well. Owen was gross in the episode, and DJ and Lashana were pretty awful in the episode. I was more than over DJ's quote-unquote cursed plot, and it was unfunny 5 episodes ago, as he became more and more pathetic. Lashana is eliminated here, and her performance in the season was just not stellar and quite embarrassing. She was so unfocused and mentally weak in the season, and seeing her beat Heather up could have been set up a lot better through the season. Most of her time involved complaining about the others, and some of these people were her closest friends, and was forgettable otherwise. What a sad way to end a TD run by an iconic character, especially as she was so mentally strong in her first 2 seasons, but she was so easily tricked here. The Amazon Race is a really great episode. Tyler and Lindsay's relationship is strong, and I loved seeing them talk through their walkie-talkies throughout the episode. Alejandro being more than annoyed with Owen, who was oblivious to it, but eventually realized something was off, is something I related to, since I was so annoyed with Owen throughout the last 2 seasons, and Alejandro losing his cool over it was fun, adding it to a great dynamic. Gwen freaking out during the EpiPen moment throughout the episode was a cool moment for her. Cody's reaction to it was funny, and Heather dealing with everyone hating on her, and her getting a new tooth was great. All the others were pretty forgettable in my opinion, and of course you had Sierra being clingy and then crying because Cody voted her out. Can't Help Falling in Louvre in Paris is an awful episode, mainly because its supposed humor is not funny and is borderline torturous. Of course you have DJ's stupid gimmick that's still a thing for some reason, where he is ranting about wanting to quit but never doing so, and blowing the challenge so he could fix the curse he created in his head, only to not go home in the episode. Outside of that, Sierra is crying, whining, and ranting like a lunatic just because Cody voted her out, only for it to be revealed that she did it as a cry for attention. Lindsay and Tyler were very enjoyable through the episode, especially with the fashion show where he was not pleased whatsoever with being a model. Izzy and Noah were great. Gwen not wanting to be a model was relatable to me and a mood, and Cody dealing with Sierra made you feel for him. All the others were pretty forgettable in this episode. Lindsay is booted here, and you really do feel for her, since she almost won the challenge on her own, and being the only consistently competent member of Team Victory, so it's kind of just like she was screwed over. It was clear that she didn't have much to do in the season, and was on the cursed team, so when she hooked up with Tyler, she was going to go sooner rather than later. Overall, she was still enjoyable throughout the season. New Kids on the Rock is a bit better than the last episode, but I don't think it's a good one either. First, I don't care at all for the challenge, or the location really. Owen was annoying to me, Sierra became uncomfortably clingy to Cody, and DG was still annoying with not wanting to compete. Only for Heather and Alejandro to trick him into competing throughout the episode, so they could use him as an ally. The two of them interacting with one another was great to watch. Tyler deals with competing without Lindsay for the first time ever, while Courtney and Gwen end up mourning over Duncan, which leads to an interesting setup, actually. It was pretty cool from what I remember, and I don't really care for Noah and Cody in the episode. Jamaica Me Sweat is pretty awful as well, in my opinion. Owen and Izzy's breakup out of nowhere is ridiculous, despite never having an issue before this episode, and it was clearly just an excuse to get rid of Izzy. DJ's curse thing dragged out way too long, and while it was nice that it was finally over, it ruined a lot of the first half of the season. Alejandro using this to get him booted was pretty cool, but kind of annoying with how much of a villain stew Alejandro was becoming. Owen and Gwen had some great interactions throughout the episode, especially as they sung their song, while I thought Noah, Tyler, and Heather were pretty good in the episode as well. None of the others made an impression on me in the episode. Izzy is the first person that was booted in the episode, and I never thought I would say this, but Izzy was painfully forgettable in the season. There were a few moments where she made me laugh, but a lot of times she just didn't do much of anything, and she came and went without any sort of impact. I found her to be very disappointing this season, and she didn't stand out at all. I feel like Sierra's craziness overshadowed Izzy, which is partially why Izzy was so under the radar this season. And DJ outright sucked in this season. The stupid curse plot was his most prominent one that he's ever had in his 3 seasons, but it was his most insufferable one, and it took down everyone on his team when he could have just quit. It lasted half the season, it was very predictable, actively ruined the quality of the season, and was never funny from the jump, so to waste 11 episodes on it just really grinded my gears. DJ ends on a really poor note. Aftermath, Revenge of the Telethon is a fine episode, but nothing else, because the entire point is to raise a bunch of money, and you know they will eventually get it, so it doesn't really have any interesting additional context. There are no interviews, so you only see Luciana sing a song and dance to Single Ladies with Harold and Bridget, which was a nice moment and awesome to see, to be honest. Lindsay talks about lip gloss, which is Izzy is Brainzilla before returning to her old self at the end of the episode, and DJ is used as an animal punching bag, dragging the crap out even more. Bridget and Jeff are cool in the episode, and their interactions with Blaney, who is still mad that she was demoted, are comedic brilliance. I See London is an awful episode. So we had to deal with Duncan returning because they apparently thought that we couldn't deal without having him on for an entire season. And they outright ignored Team Chris winning the challenge because Team Amazon brought Duncan back and they wanted to save Heather. Alejandro gets rewarded for sucking in the challenge and was able to see and hear Noah on surveillance talking about him, and then Duncan was allowed to vote despite literally just showing up. This episode just rubbed me the wrong way with how it all went down. Noah and Owen were great in the episode regarding the dynamics. Heather was still having everyone hate her, and Courtney learning about London was great too. Tyler, Sierra, and Cody were pretty tolerable in the episode as well, with their little moments. Alejandro kind of sucked in the episode, to be honest, especially with how everything conveniently fell into his lap without doing a damn thing. And then the whole gwunking crap started. Despite Gwen being great for most of the episode. We knew how Gwen felt about Duncan, but Duncan was kind of emotionless and we didn't know how he felt before kissing Gwen. Noah was very funny in the episode, and they knew how to balance him out with his sarcasm and making himself more useful throughout the season, where he was just enjoyable overall. He wasn't just being lazy. But I do feel like he was a missed opportunity here. They should have made him a legit force for Alejandro, at least for a few episodes, and they have a conflict that builds up. And Alejandro actually has to struggle and work to defeat Noah, so Alejandro can have a challenge. But they just wanted everything to go so easily for a la villain stew. They could have booted Owen here, but they decided to boot Noah here, though Alejandro hated Owen for most of the season up to this point. Grease's Pieces is a better episode, but I wouldn't say that I liked it. The challenge and the setting is great, but having to deal with this gwunking triangle is something that I just did not care for, and they both came off horribly. Cody also came off horribly because he decided to punch Duncan, since he felt like He was entitled to Gwen, but was mad that she chose someone else to date, but Duncan didn't even do anything to Cody at this point. Sierra and Courtney were great in this episode, as they started finding one another, and Owen stealing the medal while walking on them was hilarious to me. Tyler was dealing with catching Duncan kiss and being forced to spill the beans by Alejandro, where the latter had some great banter with Heather throughout the episode. The X-Files deals with the aftermath of Courtney finding out the truth, and it is ugly. Courtney, Duncan, and Gwen all come off very horribly throughout the episode, and I just didn't care about the drama that was happening. Cody was meh in the episode. Owen being hypnotized was fun, and I liked seeing how Sierra reacted to the love triangle drama and snarky commentary throughout it. Heather is happy that the drama caused her to go under the radar, and Alejandro humiliating Owen was always fun for me to watch. Tyler trying to be loyal to Lindsay was honorable, and seeing Courtney trying to force herself on him and to throw challenges got annoying. Tyler got eliminated in the episode, and he was clearly used to be the comedic relief of the season. Right when him and Lindsay got together, it was never made as a plotline to see their relationship developed, and she is booted soon after it happens. He is then used as a plot device to get the love triangle going, and is unceremoniously dumped, though he could have stayed a bit longer to prove himself as a player, or to have a Heather-Lindsay thing where Heather turned on Lindsay and it's built up throughout the entire season, only for Lindsay to snap. They could have done that with Alejandro and Tyler, but they decided to not do that. Despite that, Tyler was enjoyable overall and was one of the better people from the season. Picnic at Hanging Dork is another episode I just did not care for. Courtney and Alejandro decided to flirt with one another to make Heather and Duncan mad. Heather decides to flirt with Duncan, which bothers Duncan, and Gwen is skeptical about it. And Cody is trying to be the quote-unquote good guy trope to win over Gwen, and the latter is playing victim in the entire situation. So the location is nice, and I thought the challenge was okay, but the only characters I liked in the episode was Sierra, Alejandro, and Heather, while Owen was okay, and everyone else is just very insufferable to me. Gwen is eliminated here, and I enjoyed her in the season for the most part. Of course, the triangle thing happened in her last few episodes, and she becomes insufferable and annoying with the whole ordeal, as she starts to play victim and doesn't come off well at all. Yet again, another season where I feel mixed about Gwen overall, and it's even worse since they didn't even develop Duncan as an actual relationship that we should care for, so it comes off more like a plot device rather than a relationship. Sweet and Sour is the first episode in a really long time that I really enjoyed, as the triangle stuff is finally gone and the air has lightened up a bit. Cody sighing and going on about missing Gwen, even more than her boyfriend, Duncan, does, was very pathetic in my opinion, even to the point that he used the boat that they were supposed to make to create her face. Courtney got really annoying with the Alejandro mess, and she just got tiring. I enjoyed everyone else in the episode. Heather and Alejandro's attraction continues to grow, where both of them started to be distracted, and Duncan has become enjoyable for the first time in a very long time. Sierra fighting with some of the Amazon members was fun, and Owen was great too, especially with how him and Duncan are talking about Noah's warnings against Al. Great challenge and great setting as well. Aftermath After Mayhem is a great episode, as everyone is competing for a spot to come back. Jeff is pissed that Bridget was kidnapped and sent away by Blaney, so he does everything to humiliate her and to trick Blaney into becoming a contestant. Bridget ends up staying in Siberia to take care of a bear. It seems like Lashana and Harold are kinda together in the episode, and she makes a bet with Trent that Lindsay will remember Tyler, as the two end up being stronger than ever. It was a really nice moment. Trent and Gwen have a nice conversation where they seem fine after all this time, and he's happy for her and Duncan. Noah was pretty good in the episode, and it's nice to see Beth get some camera time and almost come back in the competition. Niagara Brawls starts off the merge, and I don't know why they started the merge so late. Blaney coming back caused a different and entertaining feeling to the season, as no one knows who she is, despite being a celebrity. Heather and Alejandro act like a married couple throughout the entire episode is great, since you know that they both really enjoy it. Duncan and Owen are tolerable. Cody and Sierra are annoying, and I didn't care for Courtney in the episode either. I also really liked the challenge. Owen gets sent home here, and yet again, he could have been booted much earlier, like episode 13, and nothing would have made a difference, but he lasted a lot longer due to being a producer pet. Anyways, I believe I enjoyed Owen the most in this season out of the 3 seasons he competed in, and his obnoxiousness, for the most part, was toned down significantly. I didn't like how they handled his breakup with Izzy, and they should have made it a storyline if they were going to go that route, or just left them staying together anyways. Him pissing off Alejandro unknowingly was great, and being an unknowing foil. Chinese Fake Out is an episode that I thoroughly enjoyed, as I liked the setting and found the challenge ending with an eating contest to be great. Heather was enjoyable this episode with how annoyed she was with Blaine, Alejandro, and Courtney. Blaine forming an alliance with Chef Hatchet was smart and greatly executed, and I liked her final speech. Alejandro struggling to eat the challenge, as well as his competitive banter with Duncan, who was also pretty solid in the episode, was great. Sierra was more cringe than ever throughout the episode, and Cody was just pathetic as well here. Blaney did what she needed to do in the 2 episodes she competed in, and was a great force in the aftermaths too. While it was weird to see a middle-aged woman compete on the show, she was a breath of fresh air throughout the season. Courtney was someone who I liked a lot throughout the first half of the season, and it was nice seeing her without Duncan for the first time ever. But as soon as he comes back and the triangle happens, she becomes as grating as ever, which is even worse because she's the victim in the situation. But the way she comes off is like we are supposed to hate her the most out of everyone in the situation. I would have liked African Lying Safari if it wasn't for the drugging that happened in the episode, as well as one of the contestants being inactive throughout the episode, and what they did to Ezekiel as well in the episode. Otherwise, I found it to be fun. Duncan getting pwned and backstabbed was great to watch. Heather and Alejandro saying the same thing at the same time, while being really pissed off about it, leads to a lot of great moments throughout the episode. Sierra literally forcing Cody to drink a love tea, which is drugging, and I just didn't like it, and it was way too uncomfortable to watch, and I'm shocked that this is something they decided to put in the show. Also, Cody not doing a damn thing in the challenge was annoying, as Sierra literally had to carry him throughout the challenge. So, Duncan was horrible throughout most of the season with his behavior, and I always found it to be screwed up how he got none of the blame regarding the triangle, but all of the heat went on to Gwen and Courtney. Once the triangle thing ended, he did start to become more enjoyable, but I cannot say that I liked him. And it's even worse since his relationship with Gwen was treated more like a plot device than something we should actually care about. Rapafui was an enjoyable episode, and you can see everyone in the Final Four, which was a very predictable Final Four, playing the game, trying to align with one another, and do whatever they needed to do in order to benefit themselves strategically. It was really cool to see, since this element of the show is often overlooked. There was also a gender thing where Sierra and Heather attempted to bond, and the same thing with Alejandro and Cody ended up happening. Not a whole lot to say here, but this episode is a great one, and we established the focus after Duncan is gone for good. Drumheller was a great episode, and I actually enjoyed everyone throughout the episode. Alejandro sets Cody and Heather up to make Sierra pissed off at the both of them, as he intends to boot Heather. Neither Cody or Heather understand why Sierra is acting this way. Heather gets stuck and manages to use Alejandro's emotions to get him to save her, and they agree to stick together. Cody sees the picture that has Sierra mad, he tells her that it's a fake, they get Heather on their side, and they all vote out Alejandro. Sierra ends up getting disqualified in the episode, and something must have been wrong with me 11 years ago, when I actually liked Sierra. While she has her good moments in the season, she is much more often than not just awful overall. Like, holy crap, has her character aged poorly, and she does a lot of effed up stuff that if she were a male, the show could have potentially gotten cancelled due to the portrayal. She was the quote-unquote super fan, but that element is dropped early on just to focus on her being obsessed with Cody. Just awful. Hawaiian Style is the final aftermath ever, and it's a cute enough episode. Jeff and Bridget get to host like they did in the very first aftermath episode ever. Harold and Courtney singing/rapping throughout the episode made it more enjoyable. I liked seeing Duncan get very annoyed with Courtney, and Owen's aloofness, especially with Blaney, was kind of funny. Beth actually got to speak out of the other eliminated players and the non-competing ones as well, so she's been a consistent presence throughout the aftermaths. None of the others made impact in my opinion. Planes, Trains, and Hot Air Mobiles was a good episode, and everyone in the final three, and even Sierra, who had to accompany them, were likable. Of course, Heather and Alejandro are pissed off at one another for feeling betrayed, while the other two are just glad to have made it this far. Just a nice part one of the World Tour finale. Though I think they should have just booted Cody in this episode. Aloha Finale Hawaiian Punch is the finale of the season, and seeing Heather and Alejandro go at one another while coming to terms with their feelings for one another, though it ends up horribly for Alejandro, was interesting. Cody, Harold, and Courtney made for some great hench people throughout the episode, while Lindsay is just a funny one before abandoning everyone. A bunch of the others had decent lines like Gidget, Sadie, Duncan, Nashana, Owen, and Sierra, while the others were forgettable. Cody had elements where he had the quote-unquote good guy syndrome, which bothered me a lot, and there were times I thought he was very bland as well. He had some funny moments, but I just didn't care for him as a character throughout the season. Alejandro was a great villain, had so many emotions, and it was fun seeing him trick so many people, so he definitely brought it with the entertainment and strategy. At the same time, it did annoy me how he was somewhat of a Justin XP/clone, and they had to make him a villain stew, and he started the process of dumbing others down to make him and the other newbies in the future look good. After being a side character at best in action, Heather became a main character again, and she still retained being a mean girl and those qualities, but it wasn't as horrid as she was in Island, and was more able and capable strategically as well. She wasn't the hero, but was forced to be the anti-hero in the season, and we saw things through her lens. It was great. Total Drama World Tour is one of the seasons where there is a clear narrative from the very beginning to the very end. Alejandro's villainy was executed very well compared to all the other prior villains in the franchise so far, especially from a strategic lens. Heather going against him was a setup from the beginning, and we all saw it executed throughout the end. They obviously were never going to boot Sierra early, so her being attached to Cody meant that he was going to go far as well, hence the final four being very predictable. Of course, the love triangle BS was hinted at from the very beginning, and it was executed when it took off as well. The storylines were planned and executed well from the beginning for the most part, and it was executed when it took off as well. At the same time, they had to dumb down several people to make Alejandro feel and look better, and it just seemed weird that the tactic was used to make the newbie look good, and a lot of the better established players came off as very cheap due to this tactic that was used. Also, this was the first season where they really started focusing on the sadism and started to lose the grounded reality that the first two seasons had, like the drop of shame, DJ's animal curse, Alejandro getting pummeled in the finale, Ezekiel turning into a feral, so on and so forth. The musical elements really added a lot of joy to the show, and it made it a lot more unique, so it's another positive, as well as the consistent location changes throughout the season as they traveled the world. So far, I would say that it's the second best season so far of the Total Drama franchise.